This is Sybert signing into Red Alert 3 on the map Cabana Republic, and spawning as the green allies on the left side, it's LiCtor. And as the Cyan Empire on the right side, this is YuiYui. And this is from the main event number 1, and you may be thinking to yourself, well, hold on a second, you already casted those games. I did indeed. I dual casted them live with GBH Michael, when you can find that over on Twitch, but I was actually downloading those, and I discovered that the audio was pretty darn terrible when you download it, and also I forgot that I actually broadcasted those in 540p instead of 720p, and so yeah, the video quality is pretty terrible. The audio quality is even worse. For some reason, it sounds alright on Twitch. I mean, not fantastic, but, you know, alright. And then when I downloaded it, it just sounded dreadful. It was like over-modulating in a weird way, and I just figured it would be better to go ahead and record them, and that way they'll be a little bit more higher quality. And also, I don't actually remember what happens in these individual games because I cast these actually a full 2 months ago. So I do remember how the series goes overall, and I remember there was an awesome series to live cast, but the individual games, I don't actually remember. So at any rate, AVE on Cabana Republic, and of course this was the first match. It was through basically map elimination, and then YuiYui decided to go with Empire as his first faction, and as some of you know, YuiYui likes to off-race as Empire sometimes. He is primarily an allied player, as is LiCtor, and interestingly enough, LiCtor sometimes likes to off-race as Soviets, and I kind of want to see a best of 7 between YuiYui and LiCtor of Soviets versus Empire, and basically their off-race. And that could be pretty darn interesting, but at any rate, we're going to probably be seeing a relatively, well, never mind. We already saw it. For those of you who were paying attention to the minimap, I was about to say, we're probably going to see a relatively quick third expansion from YuiYui because it's Empire on Cabana. But yeah, he already did that, so yeah, that's pro-level analysis. Here's what the players already did. And YuiYui going to be securing LiCtor's oil derrick, so we'll have to see what LiCtor does about that. Of course, you can decide to capture it back if you want. He most likely will be looking to clean up a couple of Imperial warriors with those IFVs. Might actually get this Tango on the right side of the map. It does maybe escape. No, it will go down. Very close to actually escaping there, but it was not meant to be, as YuiYui is going to be able to start picking away at this wall, and that is just a great idea. Mixing in just that one Javelin Trooper is just such a solid idea. Actually, mixing in 2 Javelin Troopers. Counting is pretty difficult, but he can also go ahead and throw them into the... Oh, wait a second. Was that... Oh, no, that was a dog. That wasn't another Javelin Trooper. But anyways, he can throw them into the buildings if he wants, allow them to do a bit more damage. But YuiYui is going to be responding appropriately, packing up a couple of Peacekeepers into his Imperial Warriors, rather. Going to be packing up a couple of Imperial Warriors up to this northern field. That'll help him deal with any buildings if, you know, for some reason LiCtor did decide to go ahead and claim those buildings. And as you can see, he's garrisoning them now. Just a little bit of extra defense. But other than that, the laser is going to be glitching out a little bit here. A nice snipe there by LiCtor, and he wants to go ahead and snipe this one as well, I'm assuming. He might actually, I think he's got a Javelin Trooper inside of that IFV, so it'll be pretty much the same attack combo. And that is definitely a good idea. You don't want to give any extra advantages to your opponents. Nice transform there by YuiYui. He is going to be able to run down at least one of those IFVs. Actually, 0 of those IFVs, since now he's going for that Peacekeeper. If you get a good enough angle, sometimes you can surround one of the IFVs in, say, like a group of 2. And, oh, this is a nice pickup here for LiCtor, although it's not actually going to be a pickup. Of course, that's 2,500 credits if that refinery core ends up going down. And IFVs do bonus damage to things that are in the air. So their anti-air rockets do more damage than their anti-ground rockets. And it's very unfortunate for YuiYui. Nice wall there. Tried to block off the IFV. Does get a successful wall off there. And his IFV is now pretty much doomed to die. He'll get an extra couple of shots off on that ore collector, but not too big of a deal. 4 Vindicators out for LiCtor. And he's already got his MCV at this left side for that expansion. It looks like these IFVs may be helping to clear this building. It may be the Peacekeeper, although that would technically be inefficient to clear the building with a Peacekeeper when it's just an when it's just an Imperial Warrior inside of that. The refinery core does escape, but LiCtor does know about this, which means that 4th refinery is going to become a potential harassment opportunity for LiCtor later in this game. He does have 4 Vindicators, not quite enough to take out a refinery in one run. I believe if you've got 3 bombs on each Vindicator, the Advanced Aeronautics upgrade, you do need 6 Vindicators. Although that could be incorrect. I'm fairly sure that it's 6. At any rate, it is going to be 3 Refinery Allies versus 4 Refinery Empire, and these Vindicators are going to have to be very careful. The Tengus are here. There's IFVs on the ground, but the Tengus are certainly in good enough numbers that they can tank quite a few shots if they get a good angle on the Vindicators. But at the same time, the expansion is going to be established for YuiYui. He's going to be definitely securing himself a nice, solid economic position in this game, and staying 1 base up on an allied player is very, very nice as Empire. That Striker VX, I'm not sure exactly why he was heading over there. Maybe he was hoping he could get some free damage off on this expansion, but LiCtor already knew about it, and, well, he decided to throw down a multi-gunner turret just for that extra bit of defense. Definitely a good idea there by LiCtor. And we'll have to see what the transition is going to be. Is it going to be fast tier 3? No, not just yet. It is going to be a docks core for YuiYui. From there, he can go into, like, some sort of tsunamis out on the water, or try to go for Yari mini-subs, as will be more likely. But you can do a couple of different things with going for that. Oh! Again, these random strikers, I'm not sure what they're doing, just floating around the map. There are cheaper units to scout with, and better units to scout with, if you really want an aerial scout. At any rate, there are some different combinations you can do with docks cores and tier 2 naval yard, or tier 2 mecha bays. But there is going to be a 5th refinery coming out from YuiYui, so he's definitely feeling very safe to go ahead and take that 5th refinery. Could potentially end up taking a 6th up here, but it looks like, oh no, this is actually just a single Riptide from LiCtor. Going to be a little bit of a hit squad here. We do have lots of Tengus going to be moving in. The Vindicators aren't here to get shot down, but the IFVs are. They could get surrounded here. This is a lot of these Tengus, and on the ground, the IFVs, oh, they all do escape, and those are freshly transformed Tengus, which means these Vindicators can get pretty much free shots off on them. And that armor facility does need to get protected by LiCtor. He needs to make sure that he doesn't end up losing that, because he doesn't want to be stuck on just air units. Although now he does have that tier 2 in range of that of the armor facility, but there is going to be the cryo shot coming on in. More Vindicators are going to be showing up. Is there a single Peacekeeper out to deal with these Tengus? No, it is going to be a Guardian tank, and this Guardian tank is going to be ranking up at least a little bit here from those, well, there's actually going to be the Veteran, but from the Tengus, gets himself like 5 or 6 Tengu kills, and then the rest of them are going to have to hijack on out of there, or hitchhike on out of there in the sky. And all of those IFVs did survive, a couple of them at half health or so, one of them very weak indeed. The Vindicators all survived as well. Those Vindicators got 3 or 4 Tengu kills between them, and then of course the Guardian tank's able to clean up the majority of the rest of those Tengus. Although YuiYui did pull out about when he needed to. He could have stuck around for maybe a little bit longer, but it's going to be a losing fight anyways when you're up against 2 Guardian tanks with repairs and you've only got Tengus, especially when you lose 5 or 6 like to the cryo shot in the manner that he did. And that Ore Collector, the Riptide got pretty close to killing the Ore Collector, which, I mean, sometimes it's actually nicer to have the Ore Collector on that sort of low damage mode, as it just harvests a little bit more slowly. But typically it's better just to go ahead and kill off that Collector. As you can see, YuiYui going for the multi-prong harass here, as he is trying to clean up as many of these Collectors as he can. And since he does have Tengus, he does have that honorable discharge ability. And of course, anytime that his Tengus die, wow, that Prospector is very, very close to dying. And with only 1k, I mean, that's 1,600 credits that were wasted from those Tengus on trying to kill off that one Collector. And that one Collector, even if it did die, that's a $600 bonus for the allied players. It only costs $1,000 to rebuild that Collector. Of course, you do lose a little bit of mining time, but 2 Tengus are worth a little bit more. YuiYui, he's ahead economically. Is he? Oh, he's actually going to be going for that 6th refinery at this point. So, I mean, we're like 10 minutes into the game. YuiYui going to be establishing himself not a 10th refinery, rather a 6th refinery, which means that there will only be 1 untaken expansion on this map. there is a total of 6 Vindicators out on the map, and LiCtor does definitely spot that northern base, and there is going to be the perfect bombing run to kill off that refinery. We're very well done there by LiCtor, actually able to snipe, basically one-shot that refinery. Unfortunately, that Apollo was a little bit too far out of position, and this is a crazy amount of Tengus, but real quickly, that's a second mecha bay. Do we have, oh my gosh, that's a 7th refinery for YuiYui. I'm not sure why it's heading up to the north. There's actually no expansions. Oh, wait, no, never mind. There is an expansion he can take up there, but there's none that have been completely unclaimed in the north. The Tengus are going to be getting hazed here a little bit by the Apollos, but they're not a bit too quick on the escape, as the Apollo actually does get shredded there. The Tengu's almost able to just fly away without too much trouble. I'm expecting to see Tier 3 out of YuiYui at some point. There is going to be the Tier 3. He does indeed get that on the way. I mean, he's got so much eco at this point. He's even rocking the 2 mecha bays and the docks core, all with that huge Tengu cloud. And some Empire players end up getting stuck on Tengus a little bit too long. They rely on those somewhat fragile air-based units a little bit too much, and then you can really get punished by an allied player, depending on if they get a really good cryo shot off, or if they get a nice angle with some Apollos. You can really be in a world of pain against an allied player. But if you harass well, you move around the map, and you do lots of damage, oh, snipes down another refinery, then the Tengus can be very, very effective. And this actually might be a good opportunity for YuiYui to come in here and try to do some more damage. I mean, if he lands here, there's no immediate defenses, and if he leaves some of the Tengus in the air, he'll have enough to contest the Apollos and wait in surprise for the Vindicators. However, the Vindicators are almost on the way home, and here come the Tengus. Are they actually going to be transforming? One of them does go down, not too big of a deal when you've got this big of a cloud, and also the economy to back it up. I mean, even just the 5 refinery economy versus what he had, which was 6, and, well, soon to be 6 again, as YuiYui is just producing refinery after refinery, and I'm assuming this is a Tier 3 mecha bay. I'm not actually completely sure, since sometimes I don't know why that happened. The lights used to always show up on mecha bays, but now for some reason on armor facilities and mecha bays, they sometimes don't actually show up. They are displaying here. But that's kind of unfortunate. Apollos are going to be here, and they're in fair numbers, but not enough to deal with this many Tengus. One Tengu, I think, did go down, or that was one Apollo on the wrong side of the fight. A couple of IFVs are going to be heading out, and YuiYui hasn't really had to deal with a lot of ground-based assaults for the majority of this game. LiCtor has just kind of been sitting around using those air units. Oh, he does actually grab the collector, and the walls actually do get frozen on both sides. There goes the ore refiner. I mean, he did get the sell-off, so I think he got the cash back, but also the veteran seat did go ahead and fall down onto that IFV. So a nice snipe there by LiCtor, and also was able to snipe off that refinery as well. Once again, this ridiculous amount of Vindicators proving to be very, very effective, and of course the multi-prong attacks are, of course, going to be very awesome indeed. But the epic Shogun battleship, there might actually be one already out on the field. Nope, that is a Yari mini-sub, but the epic Shogun battleship finally arriving on the battlefield. And that is exactly what YuiYui needs. And not necessarily the Shogun battleship, but Wave Force Artillery or Shogun battleship. Either one of those. He needs artillery-based units to start cracking the bases of LiCtor. He's going to be able to sit at a pretty safe distance and then guard those units with his cloud of Tengus. And of course, if he sits out on the water, LiCtor doesn't have a whole lot to contend YuiYui out on the water. He can use his aircraft, but oh wait, there's a giant amount of Tengus. This is a sick amount of Apollos as well, and if the focus firing is good enough, they might be able to shred a couple of these Tengus. I think there might just be way too many. With this many point defense drones, it's going to be very hard to contend, even with the great number of Apollos that YuiYui actually had. In addition to that, LiCtor is the one with the Apollos, but the Sea Wings out on the floor are going to be getting ranked up all the way up to heroic. Some nice focus firing here, but again, oh, those Sea Wings definitely wrecking the Apollos, winning where they can. There goes the refiner. The multi-gunner turret is still here, but most of the Tengus have pretty much been eliminated. One of them is now up to that fully heroic status. A couple of them are actually fully heroic, and unfortunately for LiCtor, the IFV missiles, the anti-air missiles, don't affect ground targets. Nice snipe on that power plant. Should be going for the production facilities after that. Doesn't want to be wasting too many shots on the army, especially if it's moving, since they'll just miss the army. But Vindicators coming out once again. How many Vindicators do you need? Well, 4 if they are a little bit ranked up there as one of those. was a fully heroic Vindicator. This guy over here, a couple of them also, that guy was fully heroic as well. But a couple of them were just regular veteran status also. And LiCtor, he's moving out across the map. He has avoided the majority of the shots coming off from those Shogun battleships against his army. And the Vindicators make another strike, but they're not going to have much of a home to go back to. These Apollos need to get off the deck immediately. A couple more shots from those Shogun battleships will be destroying that airfield, and that is not what LiCtor wants. LiCtor, did his MCV actually escape? I'm not entirely sure. Oh, no, I don't think it did. That's absolutely terrible if it did not. This airfield is so close to going down and gets eliminated right there. The IFV shows up at the base. One of the mecha bases has already been sold off or taken out. I'm not exactly sure which. And the Defender VX core is getting focused down by IFVs. Not something you see very often. The IFVs could be going for the harvesters or the refineries after that. The Guardian tanks have almost rolled up to the base. There is a little bit more up in this field, and basically it's just the power plants, which aren't too big of a deal. But YuiYui, oh, he is not going to be too happy about this. His MCV is going to be getting focused. He might just have to pack it up and try to go for the crushes at the same time. He might be able to escape out onto the water, but it's going to be close either way. Nice control there by LiCtor. Is going to be able to avoid any crushes. These tsunami tanks are coming in one at a time. That is not what YuiYui wants, but the Sea Wings are also showing up. LiCtor needs to make sure that he focuses those well with the IFVs, which he does exactly that. Cleans up the skies relatively easily, and yes, all three of those Sea Wings do indeed go down. The IFVs holding the line against the tsunami tanks as well as the air targets, which is just absolutely fantastic by LiCtor. YuiYui going to be taking a lot of losses here. The Vindicator is going to be adding that extra bit of hard-hitting DPS to just basically one-shot some of those tsunami tanks with the heroic status that they do have. And just more Vindicators heading out across the map. A couple of more harvesters are getting in on the action, so I guess YuiYui is pulling out all the stops. The kitchen sink should be the next thing that enters into this battlefield from either one of these players, really, is what I would be expecting to see. But I think there's just this one single airfield left for LiCtor in terms of unit production facilities. As long as YuiYui keeps this naval yard alive, he can, of course, rebuild his MCV out on the water and start building up more things out on the water, out of the range of these landlocked units. Of course, LiCtor does have the airfield, but can he actually protect that? Can he actually keep it alive against the Shogun battleships, which are currently on the north side of the map? I have no idea where they are anymore. I'm actually unsure as to the location of those Shogun battleships. They might have all been taken out by the Vindicators. I'm not 100% sure. That would be very unfortunate for YuiYui if he lost all of his artillery. That was his main fighting point and really a strong point of his army. LiCtor is going to be clearing out pretty much everything else on the land. There is the Imperial docks out on the water, but the economy for YuiYui isn't as strong as it was. He does still have, it looks like, 3 refineries up and harvesting, but it's soon going to be down to 2, and then it may be down to 1, and if the Vindicators get a nice shot off on this ore refinery, it may be down to 0 refineries. And of course, the oil derricks got taken out quite a while ago in this game. And look at that, the walls haven't even been rebuilt. It's just going to be tsunami tanks coming out of that Imperial docks. And I imagine he's also going to be in low power mode, which will be doubling the production times for all of the production facilities, which I think is just the docks for YuiYui. This is so much veterancy on this army. The Apollos do show up, but there's no Tengus for them to shoot, which means these IFVs are going to be taking the majority of the damage here. The Vindicators, they are not across the map. Well, they're on the wrong side of the map, really. They are across the map from where they need to be. They do need to be protecting the airfield, but they also do need to be protecting these IFVs from the tsunami tanks. The IFVs just cannot tank the shots, and the Guardian tanks aren't in good enough numbers to really be able to stand up straight against those tsunami tanks. Not when it's 5 tsunami tanks with good control and only 2 Guardian tanks. Of course, with the help of the IFVs, they might be able to eventually work down those Guardian tanks, but it's going to be a tough battle with lots of losses. He doesn't need to be attacking the civilian structure. That's a big mistake there by LiCtor. However, the rest of these units might not end up getting shredded. A lot of heroic status is going to be given away. There's only 3 IFVs left. The Guardian tank does go down, 2 IFVs left, and they're both very, very low on HP. There goes the last of the IFVs. The Vindicators are now here, but look at that nice control there. The nano reflectors activated in just the right time. YuiYui will survive with 4 tsunami tanks, splits them up, sends them across the map. The Guardians are not going to be on the field anymore, but it is going to be taking insane amounts of micro from LiCtor to go ahead and utilize this 1-2 cryocopters to really make a difference in this game. The tank busters are now here, and the Vindicators need to split their bombs perfectly against the frozen tank busters to make sure that they eliminate them as quickly as possible. Could also sell off this command hub to get an extra peacekeeper if he really needs it. And there goes one more tank buster. There's two that are still out on the field. A shrunken down tsunami tank isn't going to be the biggest deal. Will shrink down the heroic one, which is an excellent choice there by LiCtor. Needs to make sure that he freezes down these units, though. It's going to be very, very close to eliminating this airfield. And does he actually get it? No, the Vindicators are just good enough. Just barely good enough to actually save that airfield. Does sell off the command hub. Gets himself a heroic peacekeeper. Going to be cleaning up a fully heroic tsunami tank there. Absolutely insane game here from LiCtor and YuiYui. There's the MCV, though. YuiYui has secured himself a very strong position in this game. Not to mention, he still holds on to this refinery. LiCtor was never able to hold that off, and there is actually 2 power plants down here in the bottom, so I guess he's not actually going to be in that low power mode. I wouldn't think. But there's 3 cryocopters here. There is a C-Wing as well, and the Apollos are going to be here, but there's nothing for them to shoot. They're pretty much just going to be extra targets in case YuiYui isn't actually paying attention. YuiYui has to be very careful about how he engages with the C-Wing. He could end up getting it frozen down, and oh, the bombs are just too late as the C-Wing does drop below the water there and avoid all of that damage. But that is another point of contention that YuiYui just cannot let stand, is this airfield down in the bottom left side. It goes down! And YuiYui does actually secure himself as the only player with production facilities in this game. As far as I know, LiCtor has absolutely nothing left. He's got 2 refineries and 2 power plants. He can constantly produce prospectors. Well, maybe not constantly, but he can produce prospectors, make them into command hubs, sell them off for peacekeepers, and these Apollos should not be thrown away just in case Tengus end up coming out in the future. It will be a little while until Tengus are potentially out, but also C-Wings can transform into Sky Wings, which could be a threat to the land-based structures of LiCtor, and he needs to make sure that he keeps the Apollos around, if at all possible, just to make sure that he's got that air superiority. These Vindicators have very few bombs left, and I'm assuming they're not actually out of bombs. They might actually be. This guy is out of bombs. He is fully heroic, which means he doesn't die at quite the rate as a normal Vindicator would, but these Vindicators, they're all out of bombs. They are going to be crashing down onto the buildings, or trying to, as this C-Wing is going to be trying to get the heroic shots off that he needs to claim that veterancy status. He gets himself elite, and this is pretty much it. LiCtor almost pretty much cannot win this game from any point now. It's going to be pretty much impossible, especially since YuiYui can just pull off to the water here, sit around, build power plants out on the water, and actually his economy is actually, there it is. Now it's existent. It was non-existent for a couple of moments there. He did still have walls he could sell off, maybe even a couple down here. No, actually none there. Yeah, so YuiYui can sell off these walls. It's not a whole lot of cash, but it's something. He does have the Harvester now, which LiCtor can't do a whole lot about. He does have cryocopters, and he might have an Apollo. And the thing about Apollos and cryocopters is they can't do any direct damage to the ground, but if they die, sometimes their bodies, if they impact something that's frozen, they will cause just enough damage for that thing to die. But YuiYui pretty much has this game on lockdown, needs to make sure that he doesn't clump his buildings up too much, just in case. There's still a power plant over here on the left side of the map. LiCtor holding on for dear life, doesn't quite realize how far ahead YuiYui actually is in this game. And I mean, YuiYui just has to basically survive for a little bit longer, and the C-Wing's going to be targeting down the very weak cryocopter, which is definitely a good move. Need to make sure that they focus fire properly and go for the weakened cryocopters. LiCtor going to be moving his cryocopters around, trying to let them survive, but they all 3 do go down. And this has to be it for LiCtor. There we go. LiCtor has been defeated. GG goes to YuiYui. And he is currently up 1 map against the allied might of LiCtor. Of course, both of these players, very excellent allied players, but a fantastic first match coming out of these players. Not overly long, some dull moments. If you want to know how to play macro on Cabana, that is definitely a game to watch. But after that, it diverged into a wonky game. And that's a game that you can't necessarily learn a ton from in terms of like build or in terms of how to play like mid to late game, because it was just like, well, LiCtor has to YOLO across the map right now or he's dead. And then it was just super wonky from after that. But 23 minutes of pretty much pure awesome. And we're going to be jumping into game number 2. This is a best of 7 series from the main event number 1. Game number 2 is coming right up, which takes us to Infinity Isle and the Cyan allies on the left side. It's YuiYui. And on the right side, as the green allies from Team H2O, it's LiCtor. YuiYui up 1 game, but this is a best of 7. That's not the biggest deal. It's not as big of a deal as it is in a best of 3, or, dare I say, even a best of 1. But of course, in a best of 7, you've got a little bit more wiggle room, but YuiYui going into these games, he's definitely feeling good. I mean, that game, you can attribute some of it to just the wonky nature of that game, but YuiYui played that out really well, was able to take some economic risks, and they paid off. LiCtor didn't quite do enough to punish YuiYui in that game. Slightly faster oil derrick capture by YuiYui. LiCtor not too far behind. There's going to be the scout from each player, the north and the south, sort of clockwise dogs as they're heading around the map, looking for that info, just wanting to make sure, like, hey, is my opponent doing something silly, crazy, ridiculous? They also didn't really go for any dogs in the middle, it doesn't seem like. They just went straight peacekeepers in the middle. Sometimes you see dog v dog dancing wars in the middle of the map, which is where each player tries to get the perfect bark and kill off. But YuiYui going for the water expansion pretty early on. LiCtor will definitely be spotting that, but LiCtor is doing the same. This is pretty much standard schmandard for allies versus allies on Infinity Isle. Some players don't like to take the water expansion. They instead like to go for the land expansion, and then after that go for either a quick riptide or something to try to punish the water expansion of their opponent, but not always. As you can see, both players, they kind of tried to do the cutesy thing where you actually block off the building placement with your dog, because of course it's a little bit more annoying to kill something out on water, since you can't just send a peacekeeper over to one-shot the dog. You have to send over something else, typically like a riptide or something, to go ahead and remove that dog. Or if you really wanted, you could draft a multi-gunner turret, which, I mean, some players might end up throwing a multi-gunner turret out here anyways, which wouldn't be too big of a deal, and YuiYui might actually get the capture. No, the angle was not good enough. Sometimes if you get a nice angle on the corner of a dog, well, while one dog is taking a corner, you take a tighter corner, and then you can go ahead and get close enough to get a bark off there. In the middle of the map, lots of infantry, and I mean, allied players love peacekeepers anyways, so it's not uncommon to see lots of peacekeepers into pretty much tier 3 wars in AVA. It is going to be the naval yard follow-up for YuiYui, but LiCtor, he's going for that airfield. He's got his Vindicators out, and he is revealing them to the world, going to be dropping some bombs on top of that dog. Kills it with 1 shot, 1 kill. Lots of peacekeepers once again for each player, but peacekeepers, they're not really bad in any stage of the game. If your opponent goes like quad airfield, then this many peacekeepers would be like, all right, that's a bit of an overinvestment into ground stuff that can't shoot up, but your opponent also went quad airfield, so you can probably just build like 3 Guardian tanks and just kill them. At any rate, well, you can't actually, but that's irrelevant. They're going to have a pretty weak ground army if they go quad airfield, unless it's like 80 minutes in and you're just really bad at killing people off. At any rate, it was a ridiculous tangent. LiCtor did go for the multi-gunner turret outside of his base, outside of his 3rd refinery, rather. Just going to be a little bit of extra help in defending that expansion. These Javelin Troopers need to be very careful, as of course the Javelin Troopers are a little bit more expensive than the Peacekeepers, $100 more. And goodbye, multi-gunner turret. That multi-gunner turret had a life expectancy of not very long, which is a very scientific term. And also, that dog didn't have a very long life expectancy either, but these Javelin Troopers are starting to get cleaned up, which is a good move by LiCtor. However, YuiYui does have dual boot camp down, well, now just a single boot camp, trying to get up more and more of those boot camps just to make sure that he can go ahead and secure this part of his base. Gets out a Peacekeeper into that multi-gunner turret, which pretty much spells death for like an infinity number of Peacekeepers, as multi-gunner Peacekeeper turrets are so good at killing everything. They're just so good at killing everything that's infantry, I should say. But Vindicators are, of course, still here, and LiCtor's starting to make a little bit of headway, but it's not enough of a headway. He doesn't have enough of an army behind this to really roll this into a sizable victory. Maybe he gets the oil derrick with the help of the Vindicators. Maybe not. Those hydrofoils were not really doing a whole lot. I think he was hoping to maybe catch out some Vindicators as they were flying out across the water, but didn't actually happen. And again, LiCtor, he could try to make some more worth of this army and of these units, but going ahead and, well, actually, if he gets a Prospector, that's an even better move than just killing off that oil derrick, as of course the oil derrick doesn't generate quite the same income as a Prospector. There's going to be the seaport coming on out. And there's the sell-off of that multi-gunner turret. Nice control there by YuiYui. Of course, in these top-tier allied battles, you really do want to make sure that you're saving as many credits as possible. You don't want to throw down a multi-gunner turret and then just end up losing it. Nice crushes there by that Prospector. Will get the kill on both of those Peacekeepers, which is nice for YuiYui. There's the snipe on that barracks and actually gets a couple of extra splash damage bombs, at least one extra splash damage bomb to go ahead and kill off that Peacekeeper as well. There's the cryo shot firing off for YuiYui, I would assume. Otherwise, that's like the worst cryo shot placement for LiCtor ever. And this MCV is actually going to be getting completely surrounded. Here's going to be the Riptide, and these are what the hydrofoils are for, as I assume the hydrofoils are in that weapon jamming mode. If they're not, then that's kind of a mistake, as the multi-gunner turret will just end up killing off that Riptide. Goodbye, Riptide. Goodbye, hydrofoil. YuiYui is messing this up a little bit here, and actually he will be losing another barracks, but YuiYui has been defeated. That was a very tough situation. 4 base allies versus 3 refinery allies. Once that refinery ends up going down, YuiYui not in a good position. He said, you know what? Done with this game. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next match. It's 1-1, which effectively takes us down to a best of 5. And LiCtor, he was actually able to start with the early pressure. Well, not super early pressure, but he was able to start with that early push of Peacekeepers, and then just through basically a parade of units and Vindicators and nice control, he was able to roll that into a more sizable victory and take game number 2 away from YuiYui. Game number 3 is going to be coming right up in just a couple of moments. Not a huge amount to discuss in that game, but at any rate, here's game number 2. 3. Counting's hard. Which takes us to Battle Base Beta. And spawning as the dark blue allies on the bottom left side, it's H2O's LiCtor. And as the cyan allies in the top right side, the man who just had the score evened up on him, it's YuiYui. Look at those walls. This is something you always have to watch out for in Yui games, because walls are telling as to how many refineries a player is likely planning on getting. Dual racks for both players. This is the most standard thing you can possibly do on Battle Base Beta as allies against allies, because capturing those middle buildings can be very, very important. And one thing that both players probably will be doing is skipping the engineer. Pretty much in every other matchup, you go for that engineer to secure that oil derrick, but in this case, it's a delayed engineer for LiCtor, and because, he got the engineer, YuiYui may now have 1 extra Peacekeeper in comparison. As you can see, both players are just trying to gain control of that building, and it's just not quite going to be enough, because as you can see now, LiCtor is going to be 1 Peacekeeper behind pretty much perpetually of YuiYui, but he did secure that oil derrick significantly before that of his opponent, and if you get a nice angle on one of these buildings with a Javelin Trooper, then you can get some pretty good shots off and end up cleaning up one of the buildings to basically deny that to your opponent. But now, YuiYui is devoting Peacekeepers to one building or the other, which means LiCtor might have an opportunity to go ahead and jump into this building. Really nice control there. Check out that micro by YuiYui, and that's just so awesome to see, just cutesy things like that, where he runs in front of specific Peacekeepers to use the shotgun's effect of when you're close enough to an opponent's unit, you actually will knock them over regardless of whether or not you end up killing them. You will knock that unit over. There's the MCV of YuiYui. LiCtor going to be going for an expansion. YuiYui, is he going to be going for... No, he's actually going to be turning around. So he's going to be going for the land expansion, which again, actually, maybe this is just aggressive MCV placement. He should be in range of that refinery. I can't imagine that he would deploy there that close without being in range. That would just kind of be a silly thing to do. But that does allow him to place turrets like here-ish. I'm not exactly sure how far the allied build radius runs, but it's like it's somewhere in this area is where he can place turrets, because the build radius is ridiculous. And as you can see, gets himself a 3rd refinery up and running. Of course, he's not out on the water, which means that he can use Riptides to go ahead and harass LiCtor a little bit easier than LiCtor can harass YuiYui. However, YuiYui is going to be losing a couple of extra Peacekeepers here. He's trying to stutter step as best he can, but it doesn't work out too well when you're against an opposing number of units that are actually in greater numbers than your own. And LiCtor going to be securing this building up to the north will give him a little bit of extra vision. He wants to make sure that he maintains that vision across pretty much all stages of the game, just because when you're able to see those attacks coming in way, way earlier, nice control there by YuiYui, actually using the Peacekeeper that isn't being attacked to go ahead and move in extra close and just get that extra speed boost from dropping the shield to go ahead and get close enough to move into that building to clear it out. Just nice little things like that from each player, which kind of separate them from a lower tier of players who are still very good, but they're not quite at the same level as these players are at. At any rate, the middle of the map is still being contested by ridiculous Peacekeeper wars, which, love it or hate it, this is battle-based beta. These two center buildings are, in some people's minds, a little bit too much of a focus for this game. But what are you going to really do about that? I mean, you guess you could go in and remove the buildings. Hint, hint, if anyone wants to go ahead and revamp maps, talk to me, because I would love to get some new custom maps for Red Alert 3. But at any rate, Vindies is going to be coming in here, and by Vindies, I mean Vindicators from LiCtor are going to be coming in here for those bombing runs. But again, this is a fairly vulnerable location to water-based allied units, and of course to, well, everything's vulnerable to cryo shot, except for stuff that's in the air, and unlike other games, this doesn't have a resource collection in the air. They got it out on the ground, out on the water, but not in the air, because that would just be absolutely ridiculous. Fourth refinery should be coming up relatively soon here for LiCtor, which will give him a nice economic advantage. And right now, YuiYui doesn't have too scary of an army, where that economic advantage is a huge deficit at the current moment for LiCtor, because as long as there's not like silly amounts of Guardian tanks that can just crush through Peacekeeper ranks, he can hold the line with infantry against things like IFVs, even against Riptides to some degree, depending on how many Riptides there are versus how many Peacekeepers. But against IFVs, you can definitely hold the line, as they do hardly any damage to shielded Peacekeepers. As you can see there, I don't even think that Peacekeeper had a shield up for most of the time, and they just take so little damage. And they're going to kill this armor facility. There's basically nothing that YuiYui can actually do about that. This power plant also going to be going down. 3 Vindicators, or like 2.5, is what's needed when they've got 3 bombs each, and there is going to be a very useless multi-gunner turret. 52 credits does come back, so those like 92 credits between those 2 buildings. Not a great refund for YuiYui, very effective for LiCtor. And also, I don't know, maybe he was looking at this building over here. I'm not sure why he flew his Vindicators over there, hoping to avoid damage or something like that, or maybe just for the scout. But there's some nice Peacekeeper pickups for YuiYui, going to be able to eliminate, I think, just 1 Peacekeeper. But the rest of the Peacekeepers will be getting split off, and actually, YuiYui needs to make sure that he protects this oil derrick. He is going for the more valuable target, but the Peacekeepers end up getting that Harvester anyways, which is very unfortunate for YuiYui. At the same time, more IFVs are coming out. He may need to be going for Riptides, but of course, Riptides can be countered pretty darn hard by Vindicators, so it's a little bit of a catch-22. Do you go for the anti-air, or do you go for the anti-infantry? Either one, you're going to be in a pretty bad situation, because they don't do both. However, multi-gunner turrets can help turn the tide if you throw a Peacekeeper into there, and that's really what YuiYui needs, is just to throw a Peacekeeper into that multi-gunner turret. I think that's what he's looking to do just about now. IFV multi-gunner, or IFV Peacekeepers are pretty awesome as well if you want to go that route, but he does have the barracks now out on the front line, and he has to be careful about producing any dogs or any more Peacekeepers, as they can get pretty much instantly one-shot if LiCtor is paying attention, or they can be super, super effective and just clean up ridiculous amounts of units. There's one dog that does come out. Nice control there by LiCtor, and these 2 players just furiously fighting in the middle here, and here come the Vindicators once again, looking to just clean up as many of these IFVs as possible, and somehow this armor facility actually did survive. YuiYui has been defeated, again with aggressive infantry tactics. LiCtor takes the lead. And that was another just awesome game, just super cool control from both players throughout the majority of this game. I'm sure there's going to be someone in the comments who's going to point something that they both did wrong, and like, well, this is a suboptimal play because of X, Y, and Z, but shut up! That was an awesome game! You don't actually have to shut up. In fact, go ahead and talk about what these players could have done better, because that is just always fun to read people who have a better analysis of games than me. But at any rate, that was a super fun game, and of course, I love watching YuiYui and LiCtor, 2 aggressive allied players when they want to be. They can also play out the long macro game, as we have seen in many, many examples. LiCtor, a little bit more known for that. YuiYui, a little bit more known for being crazy aggressive. But these 2 players clashing in a really cool way, and LiCtor is now up 2-1. Will he be able to claim any more points, or will YuiYui start a reverse all kill and just murder his way through LiCtor? We will find out in the future games. This is Sybert, signing out.